The endowment honors OU graduates James Heisler, class of 1938, Robert Heisler, class of 1942, and Bruce Heisler, class of 1949. The Woltemade Center, founded in 1985, helps students to integrate business theory and practice and provides lectures and other resources to benefit students, faculty, and the local community. I would now like to introduce you to Matt Vollrath, Faculty Director and Associate Professor of Business Administration.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for coming tonight. Our speaker is Greg Kirstein, and you're really in for a treat. He's got a lot of interesting things to say, a lot of really interesting experience. Greg Kirstein has devoted more than 30 years to bringing professional hockey to Columbus, the last 20 as Senior Vice President and General Counsel of the NHL's Columbus Blue Jackets. With a core group of visionaries, Greg has also been a catalyst in the construction of 9 ice rinks and the formation of some 25 high school teams and youth programs. He served as the president of the Chiller Ice Rink Company, secretary of the Blue Jackets Foundation, and an adjunct professor of sports law at Ohio State. A graduate of Ohio State's Journalism School and Duquesne's Law School, Greg received Business First's Top Corporate Counsel Award in 2012, Duquesne Law School's Distinguished Alumnus Award in 2016, and the 2017 Outstanding Alumnus Award from the Ohio State Stadium Honors Dorm. He was also inducted in 2018 into the Bethel Park High School Great Alumni Hall of Fame. So Greg, thanks so much for joining us tonight. We're thrilled to have you, and I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, I am acutely aware that I'm up against NCAA basketball, all right? But I'm counting on the fact that all of you were eliminated from your brackets last weekend, so let's talk hockey, okay? Thank you for coming. It's been a pleasure to be on campus today. Matt and Jenny and Destiny and I met with 5 or 6 student groups, and it always makes me feel like that young guy, not this old guy, when you're on campus. So thank you. Special thanks to Ohio Wesleyan University, the Heisler family, to Jenny Batchelder, to Destiny Coleman, and to Matt. Took great care of me today, so go ahead. I appreciate that. Couple little housekeeping things. I am not, he said, a spokesman for the National Hockey League, nor am I authorized. I am not, he said, a spokesman for the Columbus Blue Jackets, nor am I authorized. I am a retired Blue Jackets executive who works 1 day a week. So it'll be easier for me to be candid with you if I don't have to worry about the tweet that says the Blue Jacket guy said, okay? So let's have some fun tonight. We're gonna dissect players and agents and unions and owners, and then you, the fans. And then at the end, because we don't have time, we have time at the end for Q&A, but we don't have time for interactive throughout the evening. At the end, I've designed a little ethics problem that fits the Woltemade sort of mission, and I'm gonna present a hypothetical to you, and you're gonna play GM of the team, or player, or agent, or union, and I think you'll have some fun with it. So the other thing, and this is somber if you will, sympathies from the Blue Jackets and from me to Charlie Morris's family and his father's family. Tragic day for the Ohio Wesleyan community, and please know that you have the best wishes of the Blue Jackets. So, couple inside Ohio Wesleyan connections, some things I did and some things I didn't do. Between 2015 and 2017, your president, Rock Jones, and I, and every president of a Division III athletic program in Ohio spent some time trying to figure out where we would get the money to start Division III hockey in Ohio. And Ohio Wesleyan was at the top of the list because the Chillers have a rink in Lewis Center and a rink in Dublin. And it didn't happen because it was expensive and this and that and the other thing. But I would say to President Vandenberg as he takes over, there's a hockey team at Bowdoin and Bates and Colby, and maybe it would be great to have one here, right? So just a little insider stuff. The thing that I did really well that I didn't do Your number 2 all-time leading scorer at basketball, Nate Axelrod, grew up next door to me, and I never tried to give him a basketball lesson. So Nate's success was because he was unfettered by a bunch of dads in the neighborhood. So those are my OU people, and they're really great people. I want to do a little stage setting at first because when I do this, we have different levels of hockey knowledge in the room. Some people are Blue Jacket season ticket holders. You've been to the arena 800 times and you know the game inside and out. And some of you are sitting here wondering, what is this guy talking about? So let's see if we can bring a little equilibrium to that. I put them in 5 categories on purpose. The players, they're the engine. Without them, nothing happens. But the players their job is to put pucks in the net. It's not to negotiate contracts, which is why they have agents. And then even though the average wage, and my politics are going to show, but even though the average wage is $3.5, $3.7 million, they feel that they need a union if their agent doesn't do them well enough. And then on the other side, we have the owners, and then we have funding it all, you as the fans, okay? And some days you're really feeling good about that, and some days you're like, I'm never going back there again. Every time I go, they lose, right? So we're going to try to encapsulate that. Let's start with this equilibrium thing. Let's teach a little hockey. Players. In the NHL, a team has 50 men on their roster. In our case, you keep 20 to 23 in Columbus, 20 to 23 at the minor league team in Cleveland, and the other 4 are sort of stragglers. They may go back to Europe, they may play in an NCAA program at Ohio State or Michigan, or they may go to a thing called juniors, which is 16 to 20-year-olds. But we have 50 men that we control. They are from across the world, so we are not only like baseball, we are more international than baseball. This is not your typical NCAA model where I play for Delaware Hayes High School, then I play for the Buckeyes, then I play for the Browns or the Bengals or somebody. We have to have knowledge of the best hockey players from Finland, from Sweden, from Switzerland, from Germany, from Canada. And so we call it scouting the world, and that differentiates us, and it's also a massive expense for the teams to send scouts. I mean, we use local people in Europe, but it is hard to get a read on who are the best 18-year-olds from the world. A lot different than who's the best guy on the Buckeye football team. So you need to sort of have that sense about this stuff. Average wage this year is roughly $3.7 million. There's an $85 million salary cap for those 20 to 23 men. Whether you keep 20 or 23 is a decision that the general manager makes every day. If they're just sitting around and you don't have any injuries, you don't need 23. And for every day they're in Columbus instead of in Cleveland, we have to pay them a daily NHL rate as opposed to an AHL rate. The difference is this big, okay? So we send them back to Cleveland. Some teams keep 20 and they'll take the chance that no one's injured, teams that are a little skinnier with their budgets. How hard is it to, quote, make it and play in the league? If you look at FBS football, the Buckeyes, Michigan State, 125 roughly college football programs playing big time in the U.S. If you're into March Madness, roughly 350, 360 basketball programs. There are only 60 hockey programs at the Division I level. So we're half of football and we're 1/6 of basketball. And that's why there's not that traditional model for your child to go and be the star at Westerville North and then go be the star for the Buckeyes and then come play for the Blue Jackets. There simply aren't enough opportunities at the collegiate level. What is juniors? This is the part of the speech where most people's eyes roll back in their head. So I get it. We follow a Canadian and an international model. In those countries, you're lucky if your hometown has one, but if they don't, you leave home, you say goodbye to your friends, you pull yourself out of your high school, And from age 16 to 20, you go and play junior hockey. Some call it finishing school, some call it debutante, but it's almost required. And your only other choice, if you're good, is to skip it until you're 18, finish your high school, and then go play juniors till you're 20, and then have Ohio State take you, and then have the Blue Jackets take you. So parents rarely understand, their kid's the best 10-year-old in Upper Arlington, he's going to be a star, and then they find out that at 16, he has to leave Upper Arlington and go live in somebody's basement in Syracuse if he's going to, quote, make it. So that's how junior hockey works. In Canada, it's religion. It is their equivalent of the bowl games and March Madness. There are World Juniors every year, and we send our younger guys, but the U.S. has chosen to follow the international model, for those of you that don't know what juniors means. We are a seasonal business, like a beach, like a ski slope. We make a bunch of money in the winter. We don't even exist in the summer, okay? So everything monetarily has to happen with the run-up to the first or second week of October, and if you don't make the playoffs, you're done the second week of April, and then we go dormant. There's still work going on the hockey side and on the business side, but there aren't any of you coming to games in July. So all the teams carry lines of credit, no different than ski slopes or beaches, and the lines of credit are to get us through the rough periods, and then the fan money comes in, the sponsor money comes in, the television money comes in. But we are a seasonal business. So everyone's like, oh, pro sports owners, they're just printing money. All the other sports are seasonal too, but there are dry spells. Those of you that are at the Wotamati School in finance and economics, this is not a business that runs like this. This is a business that runs like this. Our draft, so everyone's getting ready for the NFL draft, right? And it's already on ESPN 11 times a day, and I'm over it already. But our draft is the third week of June. It's 18-year-olds from across the planet. To give you a sense of how hard this is and what an exclusive club these young men are in, 32 teams. Everybody has a first-round draft pick. We have 2 next summer. In an average year, 4 of those 32 kids will be able to take the ice as an 18-year-old and play in an NHL game. The average amount of games that an 18-year-old plays in his first year is 13. That's a whole bunch of guys that played 0 and a couple that played maybe 60. And the average goal scored by your 18-year-old, 1 is the average across the National Hockey League. So this is more an age 20 to 35 league, if you will, for those of you that don't follow it. Really, really hard to come in as an 18-year-old because the men, the 28-year-olds, have had 10 years in the weight room, and you are 18 and just left your high school. And it's a violent game and it's a physical game. So just to give you a sense of how rough it is, in order for you as an 18-year-old to go straight to the pros. That's the player side of things. That's category 1, if you will. Let's talk about agents. They scout the world, and every young person I know who's going to be in sports says, I'm going to be an agent. I can't wait to be an agent. I love this stuff. And I say to them, do you know any players? Don't know any players. Do you know any coaches who would evaluate the guy that you want to be the agent for? Will that coach evaluate him for you? I don't know any coaches either. Do you have any contract negotiation experience? Didn't do that either. Okay, do you know about the salary cap? Do you know if the Jackets are over or under the cap? No, I don't know any of those things, but I want to be an agent. And it goes on and on and on and on. I'm beating it to death a little bit. You also have to know the player's family. You have to know the player's strengths and weaknesses. Some kids at 18 or 19 get homesick. I use the example as a family. We were fortunate enough. Our son ended up being Penn State's captain. But if you were to take him as Penn State's captain and put him in downtown Moscow on a team, it wouldn't matter if you gave him $2 million a year because he wouldn't know how to order food from the menu, wouldn't know how to read the books at the library, wouldn't be able to understand television, wouldn't know anything about Russian culture. And that's what these young people who come here from Europe go through. And it's really hard to get them indoctrinated. So the agent is supposed to smooth some of that pathway out for you. Some do, some don't. The best thing I can tell you about being an agent, for those of you that still want to do it, Bill Zito was our assistant GM here in Columbus. Bill is now the general manager of the Florida Panthers, very successful team. Bill was an agent for years in Chicago, ran an agency called Acme, specialized in European players, made a good living doing it. But Bill is in his mid-50s now, and his kids are like 6 and 8. Being an agent got in the way of him starting his family because here's what he said he had to do. He had to go identify from across the world, not 18-year-olds, 14-year-olds, so that he had a 4-year runway to then try to get close to their parents, because you have to get into the living room, no different than recruiting for Ohio State. Keep following the child. Is he as good at 15, 16, and 17 as he was at 14? How many other agents are trying to tell him that you're a bad agent, he should hire them? And then the kid's idiosyncrasies. This kid gets homesick. This kid doesn't work out in the off season. And so Bill said he decided to be the Jackets assistant GM and quit being an agent because he got tired of chasing 14-year-olds across the world. That's what these people do on a daily basis. So that's category 2, players, agents. Then we have the union. And what fans say is they should get rid of that guy. That guy's not really hurt. You know, he's an albatross to the team. Well, not only does the player have an agent, but the player has a contract, and the contract has been approved by the players' union. And these sports unions are very, very strong. They have great lawyers. They have great leadership. There's millions of dollars at stake. In hockey, they have an office in New York and an office in Toronto. But you can't just steamroll players with what the owner's wishes are the way you could have 50 years ago. The unions are now powerful. They have a purpose. They're there to protect the player. And it sounds, counterintuitive that the owners want to get along with the union, but that's what makes the sport work. If we were constantly at war, like we were in 2004 and 5 when we didn't play all year, for those of you that lived here, 2012-13, we missed the fall part of the season. It doesn't do the owners any good because they're either trying to win the Stanley Cup or make a couple bucks or both. And if the players ain't playing, we're not doing any of the above, okay? So being at war with players is a bad idea. The union has a 500-page collective bargaining agreement. Those of you that have done labor negotiations, this isn't much different than Teamsters or Steelworkers or AFSCME. This is a highly organized, highly sophisticated group of people leading the labor movement of the players. What are they trying to accomplish? Number one, maximize the number of teams and the number of roster spots per team. Why? That gets employment for people. Those of you that are baseball fans, baseball teams are going to carry 26 people this summer instead of 25. Last year, you were allowed a 26th player if you had a doubleheader. So the union wants to maximize the number of teams because for those of you that are Jackets fans, the creation of Las Vegas and Seattle in the last 2 years has created 40 or 50 more $3.7 million jobs for 40 or 50 men. The union likes that. Second thing they're trying to do, maximize wage. When I started the Blue Jacket payroll in 1998-2000 was $16 million. The Blue Jacket payroll today is $85 million in 22 years. 16, 85, the union would like to maximize wage. Then they want to get some special wrinkles. We have a thing now in hockey called the bye week. Every team, in addition to the All-Star break, has a full week where they don't play, and it rotates no different than the NFL bye week, but they take a Sunday off, we take a whole week off. And so there's no income for the owners during those weeks, but the players say it lets them rest their bodies. It might be a sound thing. It might be wise for everyone, but we've only had this 2 years now, I believe. And the last thing that the union wants to do is have the player's medical bills paid, not just for the rest of his career, for the rest of his life. They would contend that every injury from head to toe happened because of hockey. Those injuries are not going to go away. Those of you that do workers' comp, were you hurt in the course and scope of your employment? And they want almost a lifetime guarantee of their health bills being taken care of. We tease some of the players because they're mostly really good guys. They come in and they're 4 or 5 years in their career and they're missing a couple teeth and they want us to replace them. Like, no, when your career's over, we'll replace your whole mouth, but we're not going to give you a new tooth because it's going to get knocked out next Wednesday night. It is a waste of money. So, and the guys tend to get that, but that is the union's final job, sort of a permanent health care policy, if you will, for the players. The union fights one other thing, and this is going to be one of your homework questions for tonight. The players, ever since the 04-05 lockout, get 50% of all the money that comes in to the owners. It's just divided. Here's your half. Here's your half. For those of you that are accounting majors, finance majors, how do we count it? We have a thing called hockey-related revenue. The NBA has a thing called basketball-related revenue. And we project every year how much money we think we're going to bring in. So we have to guess what attendance is going to be, guess what sponsorship's going to be, guess what TV rights are going to be, and we file a report with the league. And the league adds up all 32 teams' reports and says to the union, here's how much money is going to come in, here's what your half is going to be. But there's no guarantee. This would be the Jackets this year, an easy example. We went out last summer and got the #1 free agent. Was supposed to put us over the top, and we are now 32nd of 32, okay? So whatever projections we turned in, they're not true, okay? So what the league does, and this is a bone of contention with the players and the union, they call it an escrow fund. The league holds 5 or 8 or 9 or 7% of the players' money back. When you get your paycheck and you were expecting $100, you might only get 90. We have the other 10 in safekeeping for you, because if projections don't come to where they were supposed to and we've given you the money, we're not ever getting it back. We're not going to chase 700 men across the planet begging for each of them to give us $3,000 back. So we hold it back. For whatever reason, the players don't understand it. They think they're being gypped. And what is this? I only got 90% of my paycheck. And we've explained it, and the league has explained it, but the union watches HRR, hockey-related revenue, very close. And when we get to the homework problem, this is one of the ones that I think is one of the best exercises. What do you do with the revenues? And I'm just going to plant the seed and then move on here. Revenues in Madison Square Garden, the most famous building in the world. Are you there because you're a Knicks fan for basketball? Are you there because you're a Rangers fan for hockey? Or do you just like Beyonce and the circus and pro wrestling? Why did you buy something from Madison Square Garden? And should that amount of money that you spent go into the category of hockey-related revenue? And it happens in every building that has other uses beyond its hockey team. It is an accounting nightmare for those of you that are studying. But that's sort of the union's last thing that they do. They watch over hockey-related revenue like a hawk, and they have audit rights in the agreement. They're allowed every year to pick 3 teams at random and demand to see their books and send their accountants in to judge whether those 3 teams are keeping books the way the union thinks that they should be kept. Sounds like a pretty fair system, but we live that every day. So, all right, players, agents, unions, owners, bucket number 4. To To give you a sense, the Jackets paid $80 million to get the franchise in the year 2000. 3 or 4 years ago, Las Vegas paid $500 million, same franchise. 2 years ago, Seattle paid $600 million. And 3 months ago, the Pittsburgh Penguins sold for $900 million. So we paid 80 and Pittsburgh just sold for 900. This has changed in my 23 years from a millionaires club to a billionaires club, as most of sport has. And your value, believe it or not, is not sell more tickets, win more games. Your value is the day you sell your business. There is this fraternity, sorority, club, if you will, of billionaires who think that it's a good hobby to own a sports team, no different than the English Premier Soccer League. They all have that kind of wealth. It takes that kind of wealth to drop $900 million. So that's the first thing you need to understand about owners in 2023. This is no longer a millionaire's game. And I spoke to about 6 group of students today, and one of the things I want them to get comfortable with, the comfort that you have of being around large masses of money moving. We have $3.7 million going to a player. The minor league affiliation fee today is $800,000 or $900,000 for Cleveland to be affiliated with Columbus. You've got, new owner groups dropping $500 million or $900 million. If you're uncomfortable in those settings, this would not be an industry I'd recommend. So, what is the challenge for the owners? Well, the first thing that the owners have to do here, our team is owned 51% by the McConnell family. First thing you have to do is be able to come up with $85 million for your player payroll. Then we have 200 other people in the office who between them make another $5 million. So we're $90 million short just in labor costs every Labor Day, every September 15th. And you first have to claw all that back before you ever think about making any money. And people think, sports, all they do is print money. And you feel that way because you paid $75 or $150 for a ticket, but you have to account for player payroll as the first thing that's around the owner's neck. And then all of a sudden the math doesn't look as attractive as it may have. Your coach, your general manager, and now everyone has a president of hockey operations or a president of baseball operations. It's a guy or a gal evaluating the other important people. Those are all 6 and 7 figure jobs. So you've got another $1, $2, $3, $4 million in your top 3 or 4 executives. Why would you pay that much? Because they're out looking for that best 14-year-old in the world to bring him to your city, and we're hoping that they're right. You have massive medical bills for the players' medical care. Hockey's violent. Guys are moving about 20 miles an hour. If you've ever rear-ended anybody at 20, it's a lot worse than it sounds like. If you've ever been on a bike and got nudged by a car, and they're going at 20 miles an hour and they're crashing into each other, they get hurt every night. For you to feel it, if you were able to go in the locker room some night right after the game, it's not from the fight and it's not from the guy that got cut accidentally. The welts and the bruises and the cuts, head to toe, are way worse than you would ever think watching on TV, or even if you're sitting in the first couple rows of the arena. So we have massive medical bills that, just like the Browns and the Bengals, they would be the best corollary. The state expects us to have the money in reserve to pay for these men's medical care because they got hurt doing their job. So their paycheck continues and their medical bills are 100% covered unless it's some type of fraud case. So now all of a sudden the owners have player payroll, business staff payroll, hockey leadership payroll, and medical costs. Still want to own a team? I'm not so sure, okay? That's how this breaks down. And then we have the thing that, and again, my politics may show a little, but everybody in Columbus loves Nationwide Arena and nobody wants to pay for it. I started at Ohio State in the fall of 1973. I'm a proud alum, but all of us got used to, we went to the football game, we went to the basketball game, They shined up the football field. They quit using St. John's and built the Shot, and none of us paid a dime for it. And we expect that to happen in the pros. What do you mean I have to pay? I have to help Nationwide Arena. But man, you sure love the concerts. How many at March Madness last weekend here in town? You don't get those kind of things if you don't have a gorgeous downtown arena. So if Columbus is going to play at that level, that Chicago, Boston, San Francisco level, somebody's got to pay for the arena. And it's now 22 years old. It's in great shape. It will need a roof someday. The players will need a different whirlpool. You and your company will want a different kind of suite. All that baseball has now is cylindrical towers where young people come, they get a craft beer, they do social media all night, they don't watch one pitch. But there are hundreds of them up and down the cylinders, down every right and left field line that I watch. It's the new model, and we can fight it, or we can build them a pretty cylindrical tower so they'll come to the games, and that's what everyone's chosen to do. So arena costs are another bite, if you will, for the owner. So I just want to dispel that notion a little bit that this ownership thing is all about the billionaires making billions more. Golden State Warriors, sure, okay? New York Yankees, probably. New Orleans Pelicans, I'm not so sure, okay? And small markets, new markets. Buffalo, Columbus, Raleigh, the three smallest markets in the NHL. So here, if you're a Jackets fan, we're fighting uphill every day. The difference between us and Toronto, this much. And you just need to know that before you say yes to any job that you're going to take it with a small market team. And the last thing, and those of you that are Reds or Bengals fans, it's in the news all the time. How many times are the Bengals renegotiating their lease with Hamilton County? You have to have a favorable lease, favorable to the team. If you kill us on rent, then we can't afford to pay our players. So most of the arenas, probably 90% of the arenas in the country, the stadiums in the country, have some public funding, if not massive public funding. If that sounds evil, those of you that are Cleveland or Cincinnati fans, you should know that for the past 30 years, where the Cavs play, where the Browns play, the Bengals, who am I leaving out? The Guardians. Anyhow, everything in Cleveland and Cincy is owned and paid for by the public. And it drove me crazy at the Jackets that you all would drive to those two places, come back, rave reviews about how nice it was, and then you don't want to put 20 cents in for Nationwide Arena, but that's okay. I'll get over it some year, okay? Last group, the fans, group 5, and then we're going to have a few ethics problems. I think we're doing okay time-wise. Nationwide Arena holds 18,500, probably 19,000 for playoffs. We'll squeeze you in everywhere. Play 41 home games. If we were to make the playoffs and have 4 home games per round and last all the way till we win the cup, it would be 16 more. So I took 57 home games times 18,500. There are 1.1 million of you that we need to attend hockey games if we're completely sold out. Sounds like, Greg, you're making a lot of money. Well, if I take the $85 million payroll and I divide by the 1.1 million people, I have to charge you $77 for your seat. Anybody coming? Maybe once a year. Okay, my kid likes going. Those are the economics of this game. And so you have to find other revenue sources, and they largely have to come from the fans. What are we going to sell you besides tickets? Parking space. Beautiful. I just paid in Greensboro. Joyce and I retired to Raleigh, but I went to the NCAAs in Greensboro last Friday. I paid $25 to park. And had we moved the car between sessions, we would have paid $25 a second time. So we just ate arena food all day instead of trying to sneak out and get back in. But parking, food and beverage, we call it airport pricing. You've all had the $14 beer at Nationwide Arena. Same beer you get at the airport, right? Same little toy you get for your kid at Disney World, so don't just blame the Jackets. That little propeller hat, $37, right? But Mickey's picture's all over it. But it is airport pricing at arenas and stadiums, and we make money off of food and beverage. Merchandise. Anybody have a foam finger? I hope you have a $200 authentic jacket jersey. Where is Will? Stand up. Everybody buy one of those, okay? Everybody buy, yeah, okay? Don't buy the snow cone, buy the jersey, all right? I need my pension. But merchandise is another area of revenue that is coming from you as the fans. Then we have media rights, and those are an indirect thing. You're obviously not sending the Jackets any money to watch us on TV. You're paying your cable bill, okay? And that's flowing to us. So we're down the stream a little bit, but if Spectrum or someone charges you, or you've cut the cord and you pay a little bit for Roku or Hulu or whatever, somewhere down that stream, a few towns down from where we used to be when you had straight cable, we're getting a piece of that money. Those are what we call local TV rights. National TV rights, when any team is on national TV, we all get 1/32 of whatever the network pays the league. So the league takes all the national money and slices it into little pieces. So you have two sources of revenue. To give you a sense as to where hockey is, and I spent the greater part of my professional life trying to make this go in Columbus, and it's been fabulous. But if you're the Jackets or the New Jersey Devils, Carolina Hurricanes, Anaheim Ducks, the lesser teams, Winnipeg, you're probably getting 10, 12, 15, $20 million per year in local TV rights, all the games that aren't national. If you are the Toronto Maple Leafs, you're getting $110 million. So the salary cap keeps us even with what we can spend on players, but the revenue differences, and we don't have any pretense that we're going to make up $100 million on the backs of Columbus people or Columbus companies. Sponsorships are probably, for most teams, another $30, $40, $50 million. All the ads you see on TV, ads on the radio, signs around the rink, such and such, sponsored by such and such. And you put this all together and you hope that you can make a few bucks and win a few hockey games. Okay, we have players and agents and unions and owners and fans. Business ethics is what they told me we were going to talk about. So here's a couple problems, and then when we get to the Q&A, give us your answers to the problems, especially students, because you might get hired. You never know. Ethics problem number one, let's talk about players, all right? And this is not, he said, this is not a Blue Jackets example. This comes from Dr. James Andrews, the inventor of Tommy John surgery, Auburn University in baseball. But let's assume that a player gets hurt. Normally, we send him to the team doctor. But here in Columbus, the team doctor works for either Ohio Health, Ohio State, or Mount Carmel, the three largest medical systems. That medical system is also a massive sponsor of the team. They're paying $500,000, $1 million, $2 million a year to sponsor the team. And one of the things they get to claim, official healthcare provider of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Works perfect until hurt player says, I don't want to go to the team doctor. I'm from Norway, but I heard this place called the Cleveland Clinic, and it's supposed to be better than your guy. So I want to go to Cleveland. Here's what you have on your hands, those of you that are problem solvers. The sponsor, the healthcare company, feels that they're not getting the benefit of the affiliation with the team. They paid to be the official hamburger or healthcare provider or official motorcycle company of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and their employee, the team doctor, has been told he's not going to treat this player. The player is going somewhere else. So your first risk is an upset sponsor who's paying a large sum of money. Let's say you do it the other way. Tell the player, no, you're not going to the Cleveland Clinic. If you do, you're going to pay for it yourself, And if you have any complications, they're on you. If they ruin your career, tough luck, because you went where you weren't supposed to go. And we have players across the league, because a lot of knees get blown out, they go to the skiing surgeons at the base of the cliffs in Colorado. This isn't something I'm making up. They feel that those surgeons are the best for knees. But if we disappoint the sponsor, we run the risk of losing that revenue. If we tell the player he can't go, the player goes down in the locker room and says, I don't like playing for this organization. They're unreasonable, and players tend to believe other players. Whatever the other player says is gospel. So now, who are you going to cave to? Your sponsor or your player? And you have this swirl going on, rumor in the locker room, word gets back to agents that they don't treat their players well. Agent then isn't going to think about your city with his client the next summer. He's not bringing his client to Columbus because they don't treat people well. And you're stuck. You're stuck rock in a hard place. So what do you do? What do you do? And likelihood, if you don't let him go to Cleveland, player files a grievance through the collective bargaining agreement, and you're going to be tied up in an arbitration hearing in Washington, D.C. for a couple weeks or a month. So there's ethics question one. Satisfy the sponsor, satisfy the player, satisfy yourself. Okay? We'll come back to this when it's Q&A time. Number two, worst thing that can happen to teams. An agent represents multiple players on your team. Which one is he trying to do his hardest bargaining for? So the agent comes in and he says, player number one is great. You should give him $5 million a year. And we say, even if we wanted to, we're up against the salary cap. We don't have an extra couple million against the cap. We can't violate league rule. B, we don't think he's worth $5 million. Agent goes back and he doesn't tell the player that they're up against the cap. He just says they think you're worthless. Okay? Player then goes to the next guy who's thinking of signing in Columbus and says, don't go there, they're cheap. They told me I was worthless. No, we didn't. We told you we couldn't sign you because we were up against the cap. It's happening all over in the NFL in the last 2 weeks. Guys are moving around like crazy. So what do? We know that agent has these two guys as his client, but maybe he has 4 of our 20 guys. How are the other 2 guys going to feel if they find out that their 2 buddies feel that they're being ripped off or lied to? Should we file a grievance against the agent for misrepresentation because he didn't tell the guy the true reason that we couldn't take his number 1 man? And should we file what they call tortious interference with contract against the agent because he cost us the second guy? The second guy is not coming to Columbus because he was poisoned by the first guy, and the first guy was lied to. Happens every day. So if you're the GM, those of you that want to be the GM of something, and you've got an agent representing multiple people within your organization, the conflicts of interest are all over the map. And this is the ethical problem that you have to solve. If you take that agent to arbitration, you are unlikely to ever sign any of his players again. There are baseball teams who have what they call an anti-Scott Boras shield. They won't talk to any of Scott Boras's clients. They can't afford them either, but they don't want to talk to the man. And so you can play tough guy, and then you may never get that. And the bigger the agency, the more you're at risk if you take them to a hearing. If you don't, you get pushed around, and you lose players over misrepresentation. Homework problem number 2. 3 to go, then we're going to talk, all right? In the interest of time, I combined 3 and 4. So this is the union and the owners, all right? And this is the Madison Square Garden problem we talked about. HRR, hockey-related revenue. We're in New York, and Madison Square Garden has 3 major sponsors, and they each pay $1 million a year. But the first one only likes the Knicks. And he or she gives away their hockey tickets and gives away their concert tickets. We can tell when you use your ticket. It gets scanned in, it's recorded forever in some computer system, but sponsor number one comes to Knicks games, gives away the rest of their tickets, but the tickets are used. They give them to family, give them to friends. So someone is seeing a hockey game, someone is seeing a concert, it's just not who you sold it to. There's $1 million at stake. Major sponsor number two doesn't care about hockey or basketball, loves the concerts, and because he said in ensuing years, I might start buying $2 or $3 or $4 million worth of sponsorship from the team arranged for his kids to meet Beyonce. Guy loves them, but he never comes to anything but concerts. He skips the basketball, skips the hockey. Number three is the other way. He's the hockey-crazed guy. And not only does he use all of his tickets, doesn't use his basketball tickets, doesn't come to the concerts, but not only does he use all his hockey tickets, but he also bought 2 extra suites for the playoffs, another couple $100,000. So now we owe the union a report. $3 million at stake, 3 different sponsors. How much do we report, and how much does the union get for their half from Madison Square Garden? Because the Knicks and the Rangers are owned by the same company, as is the building. So, I mean, they've got little different cutesy names, but trust me, they're owned by the same people. Tough, tough, tough. And if you're the Rangers or the Knicks, because the NBA has basketball-related revenue and we have hockey-related revenue, if you lie on the forms you submit, then the union calls you and says, you lied on the forms. We don't trust you anymore. And then they file, we have player grievances, then they file what's called a system grievance. And a system grievance is a team or multiple teams against the union over something that's gone haywire in the bargaining agreement. So there's your combined sort of union owner problem. How do we account for money in what I call these mixed-use buildings? We just made a lot of money here last weekend off of food and beverage for NCAA basketball games. Had nothing to do with the Blue Jackets. Had everything to do with the arena. Tough call. All right, last one. The fans. The arena, as I said, needs maintained. Needs a new roof, needs new suites. Parking lot needs new white stripes so you don't crash. And we got to figure out who's going to pay for it. The convention center, Franklin County Convention Facilities Authority, has owned it since 2012. Maybe they should pay for it. They're the owner. Maybe the team should pay for it. They're there 41 home games, plus preseason games, plus playoffs, plus the meet the team luncheon, and they're the anchor tenant, so the Jackets should pay for it. Well, maybe instead we should put an extra $1 tax just on concerts. And when you come to see any musical act, it was going to cost you $140, it's going to cost you $141. And we're going to take that extra $1 and put it toward arena maintenance, because if you've ever watched them load in and load out a major show, it tears the arena up, particularly the dirt shows, monster trucks. There's 20 million pounds of soil in there, or the WWE because they're shooting fireworks through the roof. Okay, but so maybe the concert people should pay an extra buck, or we should add a $1 tax to your beer. Instead of 14, it should be 15. And we're going to tell you up front that extra $1 isn't going to Anheuser-Busch. It's going to maintain the arena. Except here in Columbus, there's a massive Anheuser-Busch plant that employs a lot of people up at the north end on 270. And Anheuser-Busch says, you're not going to raise my beer prices to pay for your arena roof because that's going to make me sell less beer. So, you fix your arena, don't put it on my back. And then you have the final one, an admissions tax. All 4 of these groups say, you know what? You know who should pay to maintain that arena? Those who use it. So we don't care if you come to Disney on Ice or the concert or the Jacket playoffs. Every time you walk through the door with your ticket, you should be charged an extra buck. And me, as someone who never goes to anything down there, I shouldn't pay anything. Those are your 5 choices to keep it looking like it does, to keep it first class on a national basis. Okay, I'm done. I'm out of breath. Who wants to tackle which problem? Well, we need willing souls. We've got 10 or 15 minutes. I can stay all night. I'm going with whoever's buying beer. So please. What's that?
Okay, so I'll tackle the final problem. I personally think that the best way to go about tackling, putting on extra taxes would be to tax the people who actually, the consumers who actually come and use the arena, because the simple fact that consumers aren't collectivized, right? Because the thing is, if there's the concert people, I assume they have more cohesion, they have more communications between themselves compared to the people who generally have no collective bargaining power. So the people who have no collective bargaining power, they can't raise any grievance about like $2 extra on their admission fees because, they have no power in this particular instance, whereas, the others have more power. So, yep, tax the powerless.
And many people recommend that as the answer. One of the more unique ways that the problem got solved in Milwaukee with the baseball team, those of you that are fans, the Brewers have a roof that covers the building because the weather in Milwaukee in April and September, October can be rough. They decided that their fan base was coming from the main county, which here would be Franklin, and its adjoining counties. That once you got past what here would be Licking County and Delaware County, once you got past the center city and one county out, you probably weren't coming to games very often. And so they taxed each of the counties in that circle a little bit, and no one paid a lot and everyone paid a little, and it is funded. It was called Miller Field when it started. I don't know its name today. I mean, it's a $450, $500 million building that the roof closes on when it's raining in Milwaukee, and it's expensive to maintain. It's expensive just to open and close the roof. But they solved it by, I thought that was a creative solution. So next, who wants to solve a problem for me? Who has a position to take? Please jump up and let someone give you a microphone.
I think I have the answer for the very first one you asked for players.
Yep.
I said for that if a player was hurt. I think if it was a small market team, like the Blue Jackets, that they should offer them a 2 opinion, whether if they can go to their team sponsorship doctor because they might not have the affordability to have another big sponsor, like lose that and say like we're not going to support you anymore. But if they're a large market, then favor the team or the player and say that you can if you would like to go to your small one because they can afford more to lose that. I think an example was Jack Eichel with the Sabres when they treated it terribly and then he ended up leaving because of that with a serious neck injury. So yep. I think the larger you are, the more affordability you have to lose a sponsorship. With a smaller one, you should kind of favor both.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't follow it, Jack Eichel went from Buffalo to Las Vegas and finally got his neck fixed. He was in a feud with the Buffalo doctors for a long time about what his best remedy was. What you run into a little bit, if we were to take your recommendation, when the guys see each other, they talk all the time. Word would get out that, oh, the big market team lets you get a second opinion and Columbus forces you just to go to the team doc because they're poor, okay? So, but it's a solution. Obviously, lots of things happen different in the big markets than happen in the small markets. If Toronto makes $1 million mistake with a first-round draft pick, it's lunch money. If we make $1 million mistake, serious stakes. So, okay, who's next? I need 5 problems solved. We've only solved 2. 3 to go. What do we do with hockey-related revenue? How do we count the suites in New York? Are they basketball? Are they hockey? Are they concerts? Do we count a third? Do we count a half? Do we count nothing? Because at the end, how much do the NHL players get from that $3 million? Because they get half. Do I have a willing soul? We're the only 2 guys
recommendation on that one is that the revenues for season ticket holders or suite owners are divided evenly across the board, and that way you are not you do not have an issue with the different organizations from the NBA, from the Hockey Association, and all of those. That would
Okay,
be my recommendation.
fair enough. All right. All right, two more. What do we do with the agent that has misrepresented things to his client and cost the team the other player? We stay in his good graces because we need him in the future. We sue him. We file a grievance. What do we do with him? Crickets. They all want that beer in that basketball game, I can tell. It's a tough call. I don't have a good answer. You've got to make sure that you have an open line of communication. And it's not me or any of the other business executives. It's the general manager, the head coach, and the president of hockey ops who have to have at least a workable relationship with the top 20, top 30 prominent agents where you're on a first-name basis. You might disagree, but you trust each other because you're representing two completely different things. And once you accuse somebody of lying, that's hard to walk back. And so, it's real touchy territory. And agents, they're the one group in this mix. The only regulation on them is state law in about half the states. There's a thing called the Uniform Agents Act that the government was hoping would pass in all 50 states. It hasn't. So you've got states where the agents are just complete mavericks and rogues, and you have states where they have to be licensed and approved and be either a lawyer or a CPA, have a certain client base, and it's all over the map. No different than the agents that the Buckeye football and basketball players hire. So that one's a tough call for me. I don't know to what lengths you go to upset the agent potentially forever if he or she has a lot of clients. Yes, sir.
Do you mitigate that risk in business by only allowing so many players from a certain agent?
Yeah, if you could, sure. Yeah, we at the Jackets, we hated it when we got a group of guys from the same agent because they're selling you different things. The other thing that happens with fans think all the players are unified. That guy that's 34 and he's at the bottom of your roster and he's only made $500,000 each of his years, not 3.7, he doesn't want that 18-year-old superstar coming because he's going to take his job. And if they both have the same agent, the aging veteran and the young whiz kid, and the agent's not being truthful with us, boy, we sure wish they had two different agents. And you never know, and then you don't know what they're telling their guys. But what's bothersome to us is us being the 32 teams. If we do something untoward, your recourse is to report us to the commissioner, and we get suspended, fined. You've seen general managers, coaches, people lose jobs, lose franchises over racist remark, sexual favors, et cetera, et cetera. The stakes are high. The stakes for the players are high. All it takes is a DUI and a crash, and that player's reputation is shot. The stakes for agents are what? I think there's a suspicion that they're all seedy anyhow. And some of them aren't. Some of them are great people, but I just wish there was some regulation because there's no remedy when an agent does you wrong. Not a good one that I can come up with. So, anybody else? Last one, we'll call it a night.
Greg, first of all, thank you very much. But I just want to reflect on a couple of the cases that you gave us. I open the sports page every day, and if a team faces a salary cap, it's in the paper, and we know how much they're committed to. So if the agent says, look, give my player $2 million more, if we know that the team is at the salary cap, I know it reading the dispatch, the player would know it, and if the team says, look, we just can't pay you extra money because it will go over the cap, I think the players would be aware of it because I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
The other thing would be, when you in the first case, when you talked about what should you do, well, as some of our students will find out, it's very common when you get health insurance through your employer, what they will say is, okay, here are the preferred providers. These are what we call in-network. You go there, we'll cover 100%. But if you want to go somewhere else, if you don't like them, then we'll cover 80 or 90%. You pay the difference. I mean, it seems like that's something that a solution has been worked out, in many other industries.
Yeah, I wish it was that simple. The players have, we call it Cadillac insurance. The union negotiated for it. They have 100% coverage for themselves and their families, almost regardless of where they go. And so anything that seems to them like it might not be covered or I may have to pay, you'd think the world was ending. And as to the cap, I wish I could tell you that the guys, so we've got maybe, and this isn't, please don't take this wrong, this is not to demean our players. I'm at a university tonight, but there's not a whole lot of college-educated people in the National Hockey League because they didn't have to go to college to get a job. They are the top 700 hockey players in the world. So believe it or not, they may not know that we're up against the cap. You know what they're busy with? Down in the locker room, there's all the magazines. Which Lamborghini should I get? Where am I going in the off season? Tahiti or Borneo? And my wife wants to go to Italy. Whole different set of decisions at age 20, 22, 27. When they start to have one or two little rugrats, all of a sudden they're interested in all the boring stuff that you and I do. Then they love talking about health insurance and their pension fund. But not until they're starting to approach 30, have a spouse and a couple kids. That's a rash generalization, but and the guys that aren't married, they're not worried a thing about anything I said tonight. My agent handles it. Where are we going drinking? Okay. So, anybody else? Destiny, we good?
Good.
Okay. Thank you. It's been great being here. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, if you're a student and didn't sign in, please do so at the welcome table and at the doors. But other than that, good night and thank you for coming.
Well, I hope so.